Today I'm going to be talking about the ways in which you can challenge and overcome the 5 common myths about the usefulness of worry. Hi everybody. Today we're going to be continuing our series on worry management skills and talking about ways of challenging the common worry beliefs that tend to perpetuate and maintain excessive worry. But before I get into that, just a couple of disclaimers to go over. I am a registered psychologist in British Columbia, Canada, and this video is for informational purposes only. It is not intended as a replacement or substitute for advice from your doctor or mental health professional. Now, with those two things out of the way, let's start talking about challenging worry beliefs. So this is a continuation of our series on worry management skills. And so if you remember, and if you've seen some of the other videos, we started out by talking about a basic model or engine of worry. Then we talked about the fuel that drives this worry engine, intolerance of uncertainty. And we talked about the various different manifestations of intolerance of uncertainty and how to build tolerance for uncertainty through behavioral experiments. And in the last video, I introduced this concept of beliefs about the usefulness of worry. Essentially, 5 common myths that people will hold that worry is serving some benefit or usefulness for them. And so where we left off with the last video was just being aware of the worry beliefs. So catching yourself when you are worrying excessively and asking yourself which of these 5 worry beliefs may be playing a role in that worry. But once you identify the worry beliefs, the question then becomes, okay, well, what do I do with that information? So if I know that I'm engaging in this worry in part because I hold this worry belief, how can I go about changing that? And that's what we're going to be talking about today. Ways of challenging the validity of these beliefs and assumptions about worry. So what we're going to do is go through each of the 5 worry beliefs and talk about different ways and different questions to ask yourself to help you challenge the validity of the worry belief. Because it's important not only to recognize that the worry belief isn't true or that the worry belief is a myth, but also to understand why it's not true. Because that results in a much more compelling challenge to the usefulness of the worry. So the first worry belief that we talked about is this notion that worry acts as a motivator. That worry is the kick in the pants that I need to get going, to engage in doing things. That if I didn't worry, I wouldn't be particularly motivated, I wouldn't be particularly successful. Here are some questions to think about how you'd go about challenging that belief. So if you believe that worry does actually motivate you, well, have you ever met anyone or ever known anyone who was really successful and was really able to motivate themselves who didn't seem to worry excessively? Well, if so, then what that means is that worry isn't a necessary component for success or motivation. Another question to ask yourself is, does worry dramatically improve your performance or your ability? If so, by what percentage? Does it make a big change? So when you're worrying a lot, do you find that you perform even better? Or do you find that sometimes when you're worrying a lot, it actually interferes with motivation? It actually causes problems that make you less motivated to engage in an activity or to do something. So think about how you feel when you're worrying excessively. What does that do to concentration? What does that do to energy level? So if you're worrying a lot and it's causing you to lose focus or lose concentration, how exactly does that help motivate you? If your worrying is so exhausting and wearing you out so much, how does that how does that help you get things done if you don't have as much energy? When you're worrying a lot, what does that do to your tendency to want to engage in an activity? When we talked about intolerance of uncertainty, we talked about one of the manifestations of intolerance of uncertainty is procrastination. So if worrying is causing you to procrastinate a lot, how exactly can that be something that's consistent with something that helps motivate you? So these are some of the questions to ask yourself to challenge that belief that worry helps motivate me. So the next worry belief that we talked about is that worry helps with problem solving. It's this notion that by worrying a lot about the problem, it keeps the problem in my mind and it helps me come up with solutions for that problem. So if we want to look at whether or not this belief is true, you want to ask yourself the question, does worry actually solve the problem? Is worrying the same as problem solving? Well, worrying, as we talked about in an earlier video, is essentially looping a feared negative outcome over and over and over again in your head. It is something that you're doing cognitively. It's something that is just a bunch of thoughts spinning in your head. Whereas problem solving is a much more active behavioral task. You're defining problems, you're coming up with possible solutions, you're implementing solutions, you're doing something about it. So what you want to be clear on is, are you worrying or are you problem solving? And you don't want to be mixing up the two, because worrying isn't the same as problem solving. Worry doesn't have any effect on the world. Worry is something that you're doing in your head. It doesn't actually solve a problem. So being very careful to distinguish between worrying versus active problem solving. Another question to ask yourself, just like with the previous worry belief, is, do you know anyone who's really good at solving problems, who's able to get things done, who's able to figure out solutions to problems, who doesn't worry excessively? Well, if you're able to identify at least one person in your life who doesn't worry excessively but is still able to solve problems, what that suggests is maybe you don't need to worry excessively to be good at solving problems. And tying back to another question that we asked earlier, think about what worry does to your anxiety levels, and think about when you're feeling really anxious. What does that do to how well you're able to think clearly, how well you're able to concentrate, how well you're able to think creatively? Well, we know that worry and anxiety interfere in all of these things. So by worrying, what you're doing is you're making it more difficult to concentrate. You're making it more difficult to think clearly through situations. And you're making it more difficult to think more clearly or more creatively. So by worrying, what you're doing is actually interfering in the cognitive skills and the tools that you need for effective problem solving. So these are some questions to ask yourself if you believe and if you think that worry helps you solve your problems. Now, the third worry belief we talked about has a bit of a superstitious flavor to it. And it's this notion that worry can prevent bad things from happening. Just the act of worrying can help prevent me from being jinxed, or can prevent the bad thing from occurring. Well, to challenge this belief, you want to ask yourself some questions based on experience. Have you ever worried about something bad happening and the bad thing actually did happen? Well, if worry were able to prevent bad things from happening, then every time you worried, the bad thing shouldn't happen. Think about potentially setting up an experiment. One thing I I'll often get people who hold this worry belief to do is to go out and buy a lottery ticket. And then for 1 week, to spend 5 to 10 minutes every day worrying excessively, worrying as hard as they can about having wasted their money on that lottery ticket. Think about what should happen then. If worry can prevent bad things from happening, what should happen? Well, they should win the lottery, because by worrying about having wasted their money on the ticket, if worry can prevent the bad thing from taking place, can prevent the negative outcome, then the person shouldn't experience a negative outcome, which means that they should win the lottery. Not once in all my years of doing this has a client come back and said, hey, guess what? I won the lottery. So that's another way of challenging this notion that worry can, in and of itself, have some impact on the outcome. You also want to think about, is it the worry that's preventing the negative outcome, or is it things that you're doing that are preventing the negative outcome? So for example, if I'm worrying about a presentation that I'm going to give, and that presentation turned out fine after I worried excessively, was it the worry that ensured that the presentation went well? Or was it the fact that I prepared really well for the presentation that ensured that the presentation went well? Is it maybe the fact that I kind of knew what I was talking about that ensured that the presentation went well? Maybe it has nothing to do with the worry. A fourth common worry belief is this notion that by worrying about something bad happening, it almost protects me from future negative emotions by preparing me emotionally just in case the bad thing were to happen. So if the bad thing were to take place, by worrying about it, what I've done is kind of prepared myself for that bad thing. So I'm not caught off guard, I'm not surprised. And in some ways then, that can help reduce the impact of the negative emotion. Well, have you ever worried about something bad happening and the bad thing actually happened? How did you feel afterwards? Did you say to yourself, yeah, I don't feel so bad because I've been worrying about it for the last 3 weeks? Probably not. Another way I get people to think about this is it's a bit abstract and it's a bit of a silly math puzzle, but I like it because it helps explain how to really get at this notion, or really challenge this notion, that worry prevents me from feeling bad in case something bad happens. So I want you to think about sort of negative emotion in terms of pieces of suck. How much it would suck if this thing happened. So suppose one of my big worries is that my family is going to be killed in a motor vehicle accident. And I worry about this a lot. Well, think about what that worry does in terms of how it makes me feel. Well, it's probably going to suck to be worrying about this all the time and to be thinking about this all the time. So maybe that's 100 pieces of suck. Now imagine, tragically, one day my family is killed in a motor vehicle accident. Say that is 1,000 pieces of suck. Well, do you think the moment I pick up the phone and hear the message that my family's been killed in a motor vehicle accident, do you think that moment when I hear that news that I'm going to be saying to myself, wow, it's a good thing that I've been worrying about this for so long. I don't feel so bad right now. No, it's going to suck. It's going to suck, that 1,000 pieces of suck, whether or not I've been worrying about it or not. So if you do the math, I worry excessively about my family being killed in an accident. That's 100 pieces of suck. My family is killed in a motor vehicle accident. That adds 1,000 pieces of suck to the equation. So what am I left with? I'm left with 1,100 pieces of suck. Well, suppose I don't worry excessively about it. Well, I have 0 pieces of suck. And then if the bad thing were to actually happen, I have 1,000 pieces of suck. So the net result is I end up with 1,000 pieces of suck. It's still better than the 1,100 pieces of suck. Now suppose my family never gets killed in a motor vehicle accident. Well, I'm worrying about it happening, so that's 100 pieces of suck. It doesn't happen, that's 0 pieces of suck. I'm left with 100 pieces of suck. But if I don't worry about it, it's 0 pieces of suck. If it never happens, that's 0 pieces of suck. I end up with 0 pieces of suck. So it's a bit of a sort of a strange or silly math puzzle. But what I find is that for a lot of my clients, it really resonates with them. Just do the math. How many pieces of suck are you actually saving by worrying about this? Probably not any, and you're probably actually making the situation worse. So the final worry belief I want to talk about challenging is this notion that worry represents a positive personality characteristic. That by worrying excessively, it demonstrates a sense of caring, a sense of responsibility, a sense of conscientiousness. This is a big worry belief for parents, especially moms, who often tell me, what kind of person would I be what kind of mother would I be if I didn't worry about my children? And so I ask the question, well, what are some of the other characteristics that make you a good mother, aside from worrying? Can you think of any other characteristics that are important to be a good mother? Another way of thinking about it is, does the worry ever interfere in you being able to be your best? Does it ever interfere in terms of how well you're able to engage in relationships, how well you're able to be present in situations? Does the worry ever interfere in those things? Well, if so, then how can it be a positive personality characteristic? How can it be a positive personality characteristic if it interferes in your relationships? If none of your friends or people close to you think that your tendency to worry is a good thing? Do you know conscientious, responsible, caring, loving people who don't worry excessively? If so, then worry probably isn't necessary to be conscientious, to be caring, to be responsible. So these are the 5 worry beliefs, and these are some questions to help you challenge each of those worry beliefs. And so you might be thinking now, okay, well, so what? What can I do with this? How do I actually use this information to help me worry less? So the way you do it is through something we call cognitive therapy. And this is essentially thinking about your thinking. Now, this is a bit of a challenging task because we're not typically used to thinking about what we're thinking. And we're definitely not used to thinking about our thoughts about what we're thinking. And that's kind of what we're doing here. So you have to be aware of what your worry is. That's cognitive layer 1. Then you have to be aware of your worry belief. That's cognitive layer 2. And now we're challenging the beliefs about the usefulness of worry. That's cognitive layer 3. So this is a bit of a challenging task if you're trying to do it all in your head. And so to help be better able to challenge these worry beliefs, I've come up with a series of questions to help you work through this. And I have a worksheet that I give my clients, and I'll be linking to it in the description down below so you can download and take a look at this. But it helps you organize your thoughts to help challenge the beliefs that you have about the usefulness of the worry. So the way it works is the first thing you need to do is identify what it is that you're worrying about. This again goes back to that foundational skill I talked about in the very first video, which is worry awareness training, being aware of what it is that you're worrying about. So you identify your worry. Then the next question to ask yourself is, what are the beliefs about the usefulness of this worry that may be playing a role in this worry? Do I think this worry is helping motivate me? Do I think this worry is helping me solve problems? Do I think this worry shows that I'm a caring person? Do I think that this worry is going to prevent something bad from happening? Do I think this worry is going to protect me from negative emotions in case something bad does happen? So you identify which of the worry beliefs might be playing a role in this worry. The third question then to ask is, if I had to prove to myself that these beliefs may not be true, what are some of the things, what is some of the evidence that I would point out? So essentially, using some of those questions I talked about earlier and challenging each of these worry beliefs. So if I think that this worry about my child shows that I'm a caring parent, I may want to start asking myself some questions of, well, does my worry ever interfere with me being a good parent? Does my worry ever make it more difficult for me to be present in these situations and moments with my child? Well, if so, then how can that make me a good parent? So you're using some of those questions to help challenge the worry belief. And then the fourth question you want to ask yourself is, what's the benefit for me continuing to worry about this issue right now? And it's not uncommon for the answer to this question to be none. Once you identified the worry belief and you've challenged the validity of the worry belief, oftentimes it's easy for a person to see, well, there's no real benefit for me to continue worrying about it. And that takes us to the fifth question, which is, okay, if there's no benefit of continuing to worry about it, what are the costs associated with worrying about it? So when you're thinking about the costs associated with worry, what you want to think about is things like, how does this worry or your tendency to worry interfere with your productivity, your performance? How does it make you feel? What is the impact that it has on your relationships with other people? What are the negative impacts that worrying excessively about this topic are having on you and having on other people? Are there other people who seem to get similar results as you without the same costs associated with this worry? So really thinking about, what are the negatives associated with the worry? What are the negative impacts that this worry is having on you? Because you want to think about that in the context of this equation that we're looking at, which is asking kind of the ultimate question of, should I continue to worry about this? Is there value in continuing to worry about this? So you've gone through these 5 questions. What's the worry? What's the benefits associated, the perceived benefits associated with this worry? What are some of the challenges to those perceived benefits? What is the potential benefit of continuing to worry about this? What is the cost of continuing to worry about this? And based on all of that information, you come up with a conclusion. A conclusion about, now that I've thought through all of these things, should I continue to worry about this topic? Is there value in continuing to worry about this topic? And what you end up with is a much more compelling challenge, to the purpose or the utility of that worry than what people typically do, which is just stop worrying about it. It's silly. You shouldn't be worrying about it. Well, this goes beyond that. It's not so dismissive of the worry. It's more about, I know I should stop worrying about it because of this, and this reason, and because of this, and this cost. So it's a much more compelling, more rounded challenge to the validity of this worry. So this is a challenging skill. It's challenging because, for the most part, we're not used to thinking about our thinking. So it takes a fair bit of practice. And so I hope if you're interested in trying this out or using some of these skills, please download that worksheet that's in the description section below and try it out. Don't worry if you're not getting it right off the bat. It is a challenging task, but with practice, what I find is that people get a lot better at identifying and challenging some of the benefits they perceive that they're getting from a worry. So that's it for this video. I really am interested in hearing your thoughts or comments or questions about this, so please leave me some comments down below. If you are interested in seeing more of my videos, please hit that subscribe button and notification bell, and you'll be alerted whenever I post a new video. So thank you for making it all the way to the end of this video, and I will see you in the next one.